Hey folks, welcome back to Out There MTV. I apologize, I know it's been a long time since I made a video, probably 2 months or so at least. But turns out I've been pretty busy. My daughter and I joined the local NICA team here, me as a coach, her as an athlete. So we've been riding and she's been racing, and actually headed down to Hot Springs, Arkansas for a race this coming weekend. But I have been working on the trails here on the property some, so I thought I'd give you an update and take you on a little late summer, early fall sort of tour of all the trails that we have here. We'll just do a slow ride, but for now let's show you what I've got done on the latest trail. This one my younger daughter, has named Treeline Traverse, and I think it's a pretty fitting name, so I think we might stick with that. But anyway, we'll take a little walk here and you can see what we've got. Alright, so the trail starts at the same point where the one down to the river starts. That's the one to the left there. She also named that one. It's called River Run. My younger daughter is a runner, so she liked that idea. That one was existing here on the property. It was really about the only trail on the property when we moved in. It's more of an ATV, or I've even got my pickup down at once, kind of rubbing bushes on the sides. But it's easy to maintain. All I have to do is mow it with the brush hog every few weeks. And it is fun just to ride down the bottom of the draw there. But this one to the right here, where I'm headed now onto the single track, this is the new trail called Treeline Traverse. And I believe in the last video I had completed this much over the rock pile here. And I think probably it was just this section right up ahead here that we're looking at that I actually videoed the excavator work to cut this part. And as it turns out, that was a pretty representative image of what it looked like to work all this. So coming down through here, basically just had to bench cut the entire way. Some of it a little slower going than others, but in general it's not too complicated. There's some big tree roots. I tried to leave the big roots, not break them or cut them, so the trees stay healthy. And I mean, it is a mountain bike trail. We can ride over some roots. Turns out that this trail responds really well to moisture. We did get several inches of rain back in August, and boy, that just really settled the trail in, packed it in. I rode it some while it was moist, and it stands up really well to the moisture. I can clear a little bit of oak leaves there. I can ride it within probably 12 hours of even a big heavy rain, like 2 inches of rain. This section through here is a little rockier, but basically you can see why she called it Treeline Traverse. It's just making a circle around the meadow here out back of the house, just inside the trees. So it's somewhat shady, but you still have the view out across the meadow. And then this part here, we're coming up above a little ravine that's actually pretty steep down in there. But this section of the trail stays right at the top of the slope. Quite a few leaves in the trail now. It's not really fall yet per se around here. This is late September. But it's been very dry again. After those rains in August, we didn't get any rain in September so far. So leaves are starting to drop, I think just because the trees are stressed. So this spot right here, there is a little bit of red clay here, because what we're doing right now is crossing an old dam that was built. They intended to build a pond to our right, and it never really holds more than a foot or so of water in the bottom of it. So it's not really a pond, but crossing the dam here, the soil is not quite as good for when it's wet. It gets pretty sloppy there. But right through here, I actually didn't cut this with the excavator. This section I just hand cut because it really didn't need to be dug. It was level enough, and there was very little undergrowth under these trees. So I just took the McLeod tool and just hand scraped this down to dirt. And here we got a little narrow spot through the trees, so the excavator wouldn't have fit through there anyway. But you come along here, and Then we come to a fork in the trail, and we'll walk down the right fork just a few yards, and I'll show you what I did here. This, again, was just hand cut. I actually did it on a rainy day in a rainstorm, so the ground was nice and soft. And this is just a narrow, kind of sketchy little connector here. Runs right along the property line. There's no fence or anything on this property line, but you can see down on the bottom there, that 2-track, that's the River Run Trail. So this is just a connector. At the time that I did it, I didn't have any more trail built on tree line traverse, so I wanted a way to loop around to River Run, so I had a loop I could ride versus having to turn around and just make out and back every time. This is nice and steep and a little sketchy, but it's fun. It'll probably stay here long term, even though it's not going to be the primary route. But if you wanted to cut through, you can. It's pretty challenging to ride uphill on it. I've done it a few times, but you have to really get over the front wheel. But anyway, let's go back to the fork. And the main route for tree line traverse actually continues to the left here around this berm switchback. And this is the first pretty decent sized berm I've built on this property. I've built a couple in other places. I did most of this with the excavator and then just kind of groomed it with the McLeod tool. And it's not very wide, but it's also not super steep. And so as long as your speed is reasonable, it rides really well. And this hasn't even had any rain yet. This whole section of trail we're into now has all been built since the last rain. So as soon as that gets rained in and compacted a little bit, I really think that berm's going to work well. And then coming ahead here, right after the berm, I came to another interesting challenge in trail building. This right here is a huge old sycamore tree, most of which is dead, but it has these huge roots running across the surface down the hill. This one was angled down across right where I needed the trail to go. And so rather than completely cutting the root out and removing it, I decided to make a little bit of a feature out of it and basically just cut it off at an angle so that we have this flat portion that then I cut texture into it. And then I stacked rocks on the backside so that a person can roll it if they choose. But if you bring enough speed off the berm, theoretically you could actually make just a short little drop off of this. So anyway, just something interesting and different. I've also ridden up it from the backside, and the rocks are a big help for the uphill direction of that. So we'll see how long that root lasts. If it wasn't dead already, it's probably dead now that I've cut most of it off. So eventually it'll rot, and that'll be the end of that feature. But for now, it's interesting. Now the trail continues back up into this draw back toward the dam. This part was a little more challenging bench cutting because obviously I'm on a steeper slope here. But the excavator did pretty well with this part. The rock was, I mean, there's rock everywhere here, but it wasn't too severe in this section. And then right here we come around the corner and we're on the back side of the dam here on the slope side. And this is really steep and there was a lot of rock in it. And what you can see here is I actually took an old log and laid between two trees and filled in with loose rock there just to help keep the whole slope from sliding off. But the line for riding is actually over here to the left, so you're not really riding through the rock unless you choose. It's more just kind of a backstop. But the trail comes this way. You'll notice we're into that red stuff again. This is some more of that clay that was in the dam. This will probably get sloppy when it rains. We'll find out. And then we come right down here, and this spot, I have a hard time believing that pond ever filled up and spilled over, but there is a gully here. It looks like a wash that has come over that dam and down this hill at some point in history, and actually carved out a really deep hole just on the low side of the trail here. So what I did right here is in that wash, I just filled it in with loose rock. So if it's a small amount of water coming through, it should be able to percolate through the rock. If we get a big washout, then that's going to wash all this away and I'll have to rebuild. But for now, fill it in with rock. You can ride right across. And then the trail continues back down the gully on the other side here. Okay, can't explain why, but the GoPro had cut off there. So We're just continuing down the other side of the gully on the trail as I've cut it. Again, this has had no rain on it. I've ridden it in a little bit, but it's still a little rough. The leaves are starting to cover it up some. But again, this was pretty challenging cutting because of the steepness of the slope, and there's also a lot more big rocks on this side of this gully. We come down here, and now we're coming out of the gully, where at least where it meets a bigger gully, which is where the River Run trail runs down. And right here you can see there's a little bit of a temporary path. That's where I've been making the loop over to River Run on the bike, and you can see the trail over there. And then today, this morning, I actually continued cutting, and this section right here that we're about to walk on is what you'll see when I cut to a video here in a moment of me working the process. And so the process of cutting this trail, I've kind of got it down to a little bit of a science. We come in with the excavator, that guy right there, and basically rough bench cut the trail, and that involves using the bucket to cut into the side of the hill and dig it out. And then I use the little dozer blade in the front to push what I've just dug up, because the bucket always pulls dirt toward the excavator. This one can't really dig really close to the front of the excavator. That's one of its limitations. So I end up with a pile of dirt in front of this blade every time I dig. And then whenever I finish digging a section and I'm ready to smooth it over, I'll put that blade down and I'll just run it like a dozer and push that pile of dirt back across where I just dug. And now I end up with a relatively smooth level surface that I can then drive the excavator onto and dig the next section, and it's just repetitive like that. But then when the excavator's finished, that's just a rough cut trail, and that's what you're looking at right here behind the excavator right now. This section I have not done any handwork on yet. Back to about right here. So you can see, I'm gonna get down low. You can really see the difference. So that's what the excavator left. There's roots sticking up out of it. It's not very smooth. There's a pile on the outslope side. It's a rough cut. But if we look back the other direction here, this is what I did this morning, and you'll see in the time lapse. This is where I've come back through, and the next steps in the process are, first thing I go through with a pair of hand loppers, and I cut off all the roots that are sticking up out of the trail. Then I come back with the McLeod tool and smooth the trail and pull the outslope down so that we don't have a little heap on the low side of the trail all the way through. It makes the trail look really wide initially. So right now this trail looks like 4 feet wide, but once it rains and some of the plants and stuff start to grow up through that pile on the low side, it'll look narrower again, because the trail tread is really more just this kind of right hand half that you're looking at here. Anyway, once I go through with the McLeod, it smooths everything out, but I always turn up a few more roots, so I have to go back through a second time with the loppers and cut off the last few straggler roots. And at that point, it's a trail. It's pretty much done, other than needing some rain and plenty of tire tracks on it to ride it in. So anyway, I'll probably cut to that video right now. Let you see that. It's time lapse. It only lasts about a minute, but it's actually showing you about an hour's worth of work to do about 10 yards of trail here. And that's been about my average, is roughly 10 yards an hour when you count both the excavator and the handwork. So it's a slow process, but I got time. I'll get there eventually. So anyway, let's go to the time lapse. You can see that, and then we'll get on the bike and do a tour of everything we got here on the property in POV mode. So hang on just a second. right, starting out here at the mailbox, we'll head down the Gone Postal Trail. This trail has ridden in really well over the past couple of months. Haven't really done any more work to it other than clean up a few branches as they have come down and spray a few weeds as they've come up. Again, getting pretty leafy in here, but I think that's more due to drought than it is season. Eventually it'll get really leafy and I'll either have to rake it or just kind of ride the leaves out of the way. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how that goes. As you can see, we're on the fat bike. I just wanted to go for a slow cruise today so you could see the late September trail. So the fat bike felt like the right ride. It likes to go slow. What we'll do is come down Gone Postal, and then we'll take basically the most interesting route to the river. I think we might miss just a little bit of river run by doing that, but that's okay. I spooked a deer right here in front of us just a few minutes ago on my way out here. Been lots of deer on the property. I've got lots of deer pictures on my game cameras. Archery season actually opens tomorrow. We'll be at the bike race this weekend, but I'll probably be out here pretty soon. See if I can't put some whitetail meat in the freezer. All right, now we're entering the tree line traverse. This is one of my favorite sections on the property so far, just because now that it's ridden in well, it rides pretty fast coming downhill. There's a slight downhill grade to the back of the meadow here. Now we have to start pedaling again, but not too bad. This section right through here, I had to clean up a lot of broken glass. Apparently the previous property owner, or some previous property owner, had made that their glass bottle dump. Haven't cut a tire on it yet, so hopefully we've avoided that risk, but we'll see. Right here we squeeze through with about 2 inches on either side of the bars. All right, let's see how this berm rides today. Oh yeah, nice. And then off the root drop, which I just rolled. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I roll it every time because I don't usually come into that with enough speed to drop it. And then across the lower part of the back side of the dam. And what we're going to do is actually right before the section that I cut this morning, we're going to take that temporary cutoff down to River Run just so we can keep this rolling. So right here we drop off the edge, and all I did here was cut out the brush and cut the fence there. There's an old livestock fence. So now we're headed down River Run toward the river. Trail is not particularly entertaining other than the fact that it's nice and cool and scenic down here in the bottom of this little gully as we head down toward the river. Now down here at the river I did cut myself a little U-turn trail. I'll show you how that one works, so that I don't have to stop every time I come to the end of this and turn around. We'll try it the hard way today. So to the left there you can sort of see a little bit of a trail scraped in. We go up here up these rocks, around the corner, and back on to River Run. But for right now, you may have seen a glimpse a second ago, but let's take a look at the river view. Eventually that U-turn is going to lead to a lot more trails, because I've got probably 10 to 15 acres up here above the river. All woods that are ripe for trails. Just got to get there eventually. But anyhow, that's it. That's most of what we got so far. A lot more to come, but I'm already enjoying this. I've been riding it and running it several times a week. And it's just really awesome to have it right out at my back door. Hope someday, once I have a little more trail mileage built, to start hosting some other people out here for some riding. Maybe get the NICA team out for practice, or my other daughter's cross-country team out for a cross-country run, something like that. So we'll see how all that goes, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed the update. Thanks for watching, and hope it inspires you to get out there.